competitive in a different manner than the normal advertising and marketing channels you might use. Typically, it's also associated with extraordinary cost effectiveness. So a good example of that might be, I'll show you some statistics later, where by posting a blog articles on LinkedIn and in SlideShare, we generated over 300 leads for a Honda dealer down in Miami. And I think it costs $20 a month for the professional version of SlideShare, which allows you to create a lead gen form. So things like that, where you go, wow, I got 300 leads and I paid 20 bucks, you know, plus I shared material that I'd already created. It may incorporate stealth tactics. Now what we mean by stealth tactics is, and we've all seen them, we've all seen ads on the internet such as, make thousands of dollars working from home with your computer and an internet connection, click here. You don't know who it is, but there's some kind of tempting offer. Or it might say something along the lines of, get a free car, click here. Whatever the case may be, typically these types of stealth tactics do not necessarily disclose the true name of the business advertising right up front. Non-traditional channels, which I would argue anymore, not as comfortable saying non-traditional channels because that term itself is obsolete. There's been such a proliferation of channels from small screen, middle screen, big screen. Middle screen is what I call the iPad. It's bigger than a phone and smaller than a desktop. There's so many channels anymore. I think this concept of conventional channels is pretty much obsolete. And then aggressive conquest characteristics. And what I mean by conquest characteristics in our cases, quite simply, are if somebody's looking to buy a car, and maybe they're not thinking about your dealership, they're thinking about another dealer, and you're able to get some messaging in front of them that says, are you thinking about doing business with Midway Chevrolet? Question mark. See why courtesy beats their deals every day. Nice, simple conquest message, right? So that person who is not going to work on everybody, but somebody who's looking for Midway that hasn't considered courtesy might look at it and say, really? I'm not loyal to any dealer. I just want a good price. There are people like that out there. I don't like to sell them cars, but you know, we will in a pinch, especially when we need one more unit to make our SFE numbers. This is something I really want to make a point of here. May cause competitors to cry fouls with OEMs, dealer associations, or through legal channels. I have several cease and desist orders that I framed. I'm very proud of them, especially the ones from, you know, like the car companies, Toyota, whatever. The one from dealers are a dime a dozen, you get those cease and desist orders, but the big ones are very proud of. Some tactics, for those of you who are here who are internet managers, again, a disclaimer, don't try any of this at home without adult supervision, okay? I'm just going to say that right up front because I don't want to see anybody getting yourselves fired in here. And I hate to say it, but I have helped a couple of people get jobs because they called me up and they said, I do what you told me to do and I got fired. So don't do this if you're at any risk of getting terminated because you got a little too aggressive, please. Seriously, all seriousness. So, and then on the other hand, I can tell you that the dealers that I've worked for, I got bonuses for doing this stuff. When Mr. Grewell would get another letter from General Motors, he'd call me in his office, he'd yell at me, and then he'd calm down and he'd say, keep up the good work. You know, welcome to the car business, right? Okay, so one thing I like to do right up front is acknowledge my sources. I beg, borrow, and steal ideas, content from all over the web. I mean, I buy books, I've got stacks of books at home on this stuff, but I always like to give credit. And this guy right here, this Conrad Levinson, I've never met him in person. There's a couple other authors I have, but I haven't met Conrad. But his material is inspirational to me. It's not specific to the car business, but it seems very relevant to the car business for me. So I invite you to visit gmarketing.com, which is about guerrilla marketing. Again, I always like to give credit where credit is due. So let's take a look at the prerequisites. Before you can do anything I'm going to show you in this presentation, you're going to need to have your own Google AdWords account. Okay, something that not a vendor or supplier, but one that you, if you're working in a dealership, to have control of yourself. And this is okay to use a vendor or do it yourself, but you need to be able to build microsites, otherwise known landing pages. At Tier 10 and Team Velocity, we call them offer sites because we use them to promote the offer as a landing page when we have a specific offer we're promoting. Social media accounts and profiles, things like a Facebook, profile, a Twitter account. It'd be nice to have a WordPress blog, whatever social media assets you can leverage. And this is real big. The ability to acquire URLs and be able to manage them. I use network solutions. A lot of people use GoDaddy. They all work fine, whatever your preference is. Display ad creation capabilities is a little tougher. I built 3 teams in my life that were in charge with delivering the service of providing display ad creation for dealers. And it always seems like it should be a lot easier than it is. So one idea I'll throw out there is the wonderful people at Cars.com. When I was the last dealership I was managing, I'd buy for $500 a month, I bought the ad space in the top of the search results for Chevrolet and Phoenix. And they would let me change the ad every month. So what I would do is I'd say, hey, I need an ad that says this. They'd send it to me, I'd save it, and then I'd go, you know what, I changed my mind, I need another ad done like this. They'd send it to me, I'd save it, and then I'd do that about 3 or 4 times, so I'd have all my ad created for the whole month for advertising everywhere else. And I was very loyal to Cars.com as a result of that, because besides the great advertising that I got from Cars.com and the great results, they also became my creative shop. I'm not sure that they'll do that for anybody. Anybody here who works for Cars.com, probably ready to kill me right about now, but just sharing with you what I did. But you need to have the ability to do that. Generating trackable phone numbers, who's calling, call source, call bright, whatever your flavor. Actually, the best one of them all is something called call review, but that's a new religion for me. Targeted email campaign capabilities, CRM tools, lead management tools, a way to send out emails. By the way, great tool to have an account with Constant Contact or Exact Target or one of these whitelisted email providers is a great resource for guerrilla marketing. Informed general manager and a plausible denial dealer principle. What I mean by this is you need to have a conversation with the GM and the dealer. They may tell you not to try this stuff, but if you do, what you want is your dealer not to know it, so that when he gets the calls or the certified letters from attorneys and stuff, he can say, what did Ralph do this time? God damn, I'm gonna have to squash him. I apologize for this, we'll get it taken down right away. Okay, so you need to have that sort of plausible deniability to get yourself out of trouble. By the way, that's how you know when you're doing a good job. If all your competition is complaining about you, you're probably doing something right. Legal counsel adept at handling cease and desist is recommended, but not actually required. Okay, what I did here is I just threw together some pictures of some stuff I did in the past, some examples of some offline stealth advertising, some going after payment buyers. Remember when I was talking about URLs, about being able to have it? To give you an example of what really makes a lot of this work is, this is a screen capture from one landing page designed to capture leads from people who are willing to give referrals. In other words, if you know that somebody you work with or a relative is interested in a car, fill out this form, and if they buy a car from us, we'll give them $300. Not legal in every state. What we did do, though, is we used multiple URLs that all pointed to this form, so that when we looked at the records, the analytics, we could tell which URLs generated the traffic that generated the leads. Okay, so it wasn't just the traffic we wanted to track which lead sources or which traffic sources generated leads. So these URLs were assigned to different ads in different places. So for example, we had an outside billboard that said ChevyReferral.com, but then we had a search advertising campaign for people looking for credit, and we advertised ChevyFund.com. So this allowed us to go back and would allow you to be able to track it. Think of domain names as being sort of like toll-free phone numbers to use for tracking purposes. There's some other benefits too. In the case of search advertising campaigns, if the keywords are Chevy and referral, and you're bidding on those words, if the words are in the domain, it's been my experience that you get a lower minimum bid to get your ad to appear on the search engine results, because it raises the quality score of the ad itself. Lately, we've been doing a lot of this where I work at Tier 10, and I got a young guy hired right out of college last May, and he's taken this to a science. So I taught him what I thought I knew, and what he's done with it since then has been amazing. I'm seeing cost per clicks as lower than I've ever seen, and I've been doing it since 2004. So, very effective technique. These are an example of some URLs. You can kind of imagine what some of them were used for, but it's just a partial sampling. Just to demonstrate what I mean by that need for, keep hitting the end button here. There we go. So this is a list of our URL asset library at the Chevy dealer where I worked. And I just wanted to show you that this is not something I'm just talking about. This is the real deal. We had over 500 URLs. Now, do these techniques work? Well, that's our lead volume over time when we deployed this. And there's our sales volume through internet-generated leads. One of the ways that we manage, because when you get into these types of guerrilla marketing campaigns, what they're characterized by is, yeah, you have your main campaigns that your dealership is running, the conventional or offline media, the big message. But what you might be running is a whole bunch of these types of guerrilla marketing type campaigns, and just keeping track of which ones are working and which ones aren't. What I did is I used a spreadsheet that would automatically, if a particular metric was performing at 20% better than average or higher, it was green. If it was within 20% above or 20% below, it goes to yellow. And if it was a metric that came in at undesirable by more than 20%, the cell would turn red. So very quickly, every month, I would look at my campaigns, and sometimes, if something had 2 reds, I would just pause the campaign, okay? Or you go in there and change something. But when it reminded me of every month of playing one of those carnival games where the thing pops up and you got to hit it with a hammer. So every time I'd see a red cell, I'd say, I got to check that. If something was all green or just green and yellow, as long as I had reds to work on, I ignored the greens and the yellows and let them run, okay? But it was all part of balancing the budget. So over here, in this case, I had a $25,000 budget for all of this stuff that I was managing, and I was, raising and lowering the budgets based on which campaigns were working more effectively than the others. Now, in that particular case, I was focused on lead generation. Lead source and disposition analysis, I noticed right away that there were certain places I could advertise and promote, certain categories in terms of what I was doing with guerrilla marketing tactics. And what I would do is I might take, say, online credit applications. In this case, I'm looking at 6,000 online credit apps. They came from multiple sources, but I dumped them into one category so I could evaluate that category of marketing efforts and whether it was paying off or not. So the thing I noticed right away was certain categories consistently had a higher close rate than other categories, like membership and referrals. This kind of makes sense. You get people to join, in this case, membership. I was referring to a Chevy community. I had acquired the URL chevycommunity.com and created this enthusiast site for people who like Chevys. So the lead volume might not be that as much, but the close rate was a lot higher. What's nice when you get to look at it this way is you start realizing that there are some limits to certain categories, but you wouldn't want to do without the category. You just don't want to overfund that category. You want to give it just the right amount so that you can get the maximum number of leads. But I could have spent twice as much money and maybe gotten 1,500 leads instead of 1,200 in that case. So that's my point here, is that just because something is a better strategy or a better campaign tactic, sometimes there's a limit of volume in your market area. So breaking it down into an even more granular level, I'm not telling you that these are great numbers. I'm telling you these are the numbers you should be looking at. So for example, in this particular case, the total money we invested, and this was a 4-month, we call them flights. So the campaign might have a 3-month flight or a 2-month flight, or I've had campaigns that have Facebook campaigns that have 3-day weekend flights. This is 4 months, 72,000 invested. We look at the cost per 1,000 impressions, the cost per click-through or per visitor, the cost per lead generated, and the cost per vehicle retailed. So those numbers come from these over here. Impressions generated, traffic that came through, leads that were generated, and how many vehicles were sold, contributing. So just, again, an example of some of the things you should be looking at. So how does this thing lay out for somebody working at a dealership? Basically, a big part of it, besides the attract part, is to create your network of websites that you're focusing on. So this is just an example of one. You Got Gas was all based on people searching for the price of gas. You know, when gas spikes, you get a lot of activity, people searching for that. Well, if they care about the price of gas, buy a new Chevy from me and I'll give you a year worth of gas for free. You don't have to worry about it. That was a campaign. Chevy Price Quote, just like a third-party lead provider. Free oil changes. ChevyPride.com was targeting the gay community. 2007 Tahoe was pretty obvious. We buy Chevys, buyback. GMAC, AZ. I ran this for about 2 years before GM busted me, but that worked pretty well. Get a Camaro, so on and so forth. These were primary websites, big, major, full-fledged websites we built. These were microsites, and these are over here were campaigns. Again, just a snapshot of what it should look like. Yours should look different. So let's take a look at some competitive Conquest targeting. First example I'm going to use, because I can't get in trouble because they went out of business, is Bill Hurd. So you can see I have things organized by the dealers that I was going after to steal their business, okay? I work for Courtesy Chevrolet. These are all my competitors. So, and I would manage campaigns and see how many people I could get that were looking for one of my competitors to come over, submit a lead, and buy a car from me. In this case, this particular snapshot, we were able to get 223 customers. Yeah, we showed the ad 83,000 times, but we got 223 customers coming that were searching for Bill Hurd Chevrolet to come over to Courtesy Chevrolet. You can see what the ad said. We headlined it with the name of the dealer to get the quality score. I also bought the domain, Bill Hurd Chevrolet with dashes. Questionable, red flag, questionable practice, okay? Don't let this happen to you is my point here. If somebody tries this on you, you smack them down, okay? But just be aware that there are some crafty people out there. You don't want me working for one of your competitors in your market. Just take my word for that, okay? So we got that, and the good news was we were probably getting clicks from people searching for Bill Hurd Chevrolet at a lower cost than Bill Hurd Chevrolet was paying, because we did a better job of it. But we didn't pretend we were Bill Hurd. That would be deceptive, and deception doesn't work as the consumer realizes what's going on, and they abandon you. So we said hassle-free Chevrolet prices online will beat Bill Hurd Chevy prices. We wanted to make it very obvious we were competing against Bill Hurd Chevrolet.